The Council's priority channel crackled with static and fear. All Allied vessels, this is Supreme Tactical Command. Code Black, hemorrhage. Repeat, Code Black. The Veil breach has reached critical cascade. The swarm's 7th wave is enveloping Sector 9. Estimated survival window, 140 standard minutes. Full retreat is ordered. All ships fall back to the Themis Rift. This is not a suggestion. This is the final contingency. Across the fleet, alien captains complied without hesitation. The crystalline warships of the Thren dissolved into slipstream. The crustacean-like dreadnoughts of the Krix turned their armored prows and burned hard for the exit vector. The biomechanical cruisers of the Ildar wept psychic coolant and followed. 23 species, 217 capital ships, all running, all except one. The vessel was small by fleet standards, a Corvette-class strikecraft with blocky utilitarian lines. No organic curves, no bioluminescent skin, no shimmering energy shields that sang with harmonic resonance. It was painted matte black, welded by human hands, powered by a fusion core that should have shaken itself apart a decade ago. Its name, stenciled in faded white lettering along the hull, read Last Gasp. Inside the cockpit, a single human sat motionless. Commander Elias Vance had not slept in 72 hours. His face was a map of old burns and older regrets. Grey streaked his temples, but his eyes were the color of forged steel, calm, focused, and utterly unreadable. He wore a flight suit that had been patched in 6 places. His hands rested on the throttle and stick with the loose precision of a concert pianist who had played the same requiem 1,000 times. Behind his left ear, the neural link pulsed amber. The Council's retreat order echoed again, automated now, repeating every 30 seconds. Allied vessels retreat vector locked. Confirm compliance. The last gasp. Zonboard AI, a fragmented but loyal construct named Lumen, spoke in a soft, feminine voice. Commander, the Council is pinging us for confirmation. They show our IFF still stationary relative to the swarm's advance. They believe our transponder is malfunctioning. Vance didn't look away from the main viewport. The swarm was visible now as a shimmering wall of chitin and directed energy, a living storm of biomechanical hunting machines that had already consumed 3 star systems. Each drone was the size of a fighter. The larger entities, the broodmothers, were the size of moons, and at the center of it all, barely perceptible, was something else. Something that bent light and made sensors scream gibberish before burning out. "Send them the standard diagnostic reply," Vance said. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of someone who had stopped asking permission years ago. Faulty transponder. Manual override in progress. Lumen hesitated, a human trait she had learned from him. "Commander, the Krix flagship is hailing us on direct channel. It's War Master Thrax himself." "Put him through." The screen crackled, and the face of a Krix filled the display. He was ancient by his species standards, his carapace scarred by 100 battles. His mandibles clicked in a pattern that translated to cold fury. "Human vessel." "Last gasp," Thrax said. His voice was a rumble like boulders grinding underwater. "You are 5,000 kilometers behind the retreat line. Your species was granted observer status in this coalition as a courtesy. Do not mistake our tolerance for patience. Power your slipstream and withdraw, or I will mark you as a deserter and leave you to the swarm." Vance met the alien's gaze without flinching. "War Master, how many ships did you lose in the first 6 waves?" The mandibles stopped clicking. "That is classified." "I read the after-action reports your council tried to bury," Vance said. 312 vessels, 40,000 crew, and you didn't even slow them down. You just fed the swarm better metal. Thrax's eyes narrowed to slits. "You are a single human in a rust-bucket corvette. What could you possibly do that our combined armada could not?" Vance reached up and tapped a secondary display. It showed a tactical map of the Sector 9 battlefield, thousands of blue icons retreating, red icons advancing, and one single white icon holding position like a gravestone. "Your sensors are calibrated for energy signatures and mass displacement," Vance said quietly. "You're blind to the pattern. The swarm doesn't chase. It herds, The seventh wave isn't an attack, it's a net. If we all retreat to the Themis Rift, we'll be channeled into a kill box. Every ship in the Coalition dies within the hour. Thrax recoiled as if struck. Impossible. The Council's strategic models predicted— Your models are wrong. Vance's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I've watched every battle recording from the last 3 months. The swarm never commits to a full pursuit. It always leaves an escape vector. And every time the Council takes it, you're not retreating, you're being harvested. Silence stretched across the channel. Behind Thrax, Crick's officers were frozen at their stations, their antennae twitching in alarm. Then the Council's Supreme Commander, an ancient Thren named Overseer Yarlix, appeared in a split-screen window. The Thren were translucent beings of crystalline lattice and neural fluid, their emotions visible as color shifts within their cores. Yarlix was currently a deep, cold blue, the color of pure logic. Human Vance, Yarlix said, and even his name sounded like an equation being dismissed. Your hypothesis is noted. It is also statistically insignificant. You have access to less than 0.03% of the Council's tactical data. The retreat order is based on 4 million simulations. Compliance is mandatory. Power your slipstream. Vance's jaw tightened. A tiny muscle jumped near his left eye. That was the only sign of emotion he allowed. 4 million simulations, he repeated. All of them run by the same flawed assumption. You treat the swarm like a natural disaster. It's not. It's a predator. And predators don't attack the herd. They attack the outlier, the one that doesn't run. He turned back to his controls and began inputting a sequence that made Lumen's warning lights flicker to yellow. Commander, Lumen said privately through his earpiece, you're spooling weapons, all of them. I know. We have 1 railgun, 2 missile pods, and a point defense laser that needs recalibration. The swarm's smallest drone has more firepower than our entire ship. I know that too. Vance finished the sequence and pushed the throttle forward. The last gasp. Engines roared, a deep guttural sound that was more felt than heard. The ship began moving away from the retreat vector, toward the swarm. Yarlix's crystalline form flickered with streaks of orange, the Thren equivalent of disbelief. You are committing suicide, and for what? Pride? Defiance? No, Vance said. Payback. He cut the channel. The swarm noticed him immediately. Vance watched through the viewport as the shimmering wall of chitin began to ripple. Hundreds of drones detached from the main mass, their wings vibrating at frequencies that turned the vacuum into a killing medium. They were beautiful in a terrible way, each one a masterpiece of organic engineering, with claws that could shear through battleship armor and neural cores that learned from every kill. Incoming, Lumen said. Her voice remained calm, but Vance noticed she had started compressing her data streams, a nervous habit she'd picked up from him. 312 drones. Vector will intercept in 90 seconds. Vance didn't turn away. He didn't flinch. Instead, he opened a private channel, one that bypassed the Council entirely and broadcast directly to every ship in the retreating fleet. This is Commander Elias Vance of the Earth vessel. Last gasp. I'm about to do something stupid. I need you to watch. The channel erupted with protests, but Vance cut them off with a single click. He reached under his console and pulled out a physical switch, an antique, something no modern ship used anymore. It was taped into place with worn duct tape. He flipped it. The last gasp shuddered. A panel on the hull slid open, revealing something that had no business being on a corvette. A salvaged Ildar singularity projector, jury-rigged with human engineering and held together by spite. It glowed an angry purple as it powered up. Commander, Lumen said, her voice rising slightly, that device has a 12% chance of not destroying the ship when fired. I like those odds. Vance waited. The drones were 5,000 kilometers out, then 4, then 3. He could see their individual claws now, their multi-lensed eyes reflecting the distant light of dying stars. 2,000 kilometers. He didn't fire. 1,000. The Council channel was screaming. Thrax was bellowing orders. Yarlix's crystalline form had gone red. Panic, translated through alien biology. 500. Vance exhaled. A long, slow breath. Then he whispered something Lumen's microphones barely caught. For Maria. For Leo. For everyone who ran. He fired. The singularity projector didn't launch a projectile. It didn't emit a beam. Instead, it created a brief contained tear in space-time, a microscopic black hole that existed for exactly 0.3 seconds before evaporating. But in that 0.3 seconds, it swallowed everything within a 50-kilometer radius. The drones vanished, not destroyed, erased. 312 hunter-killers turned into a spherical patch of nothing. And directly behind them, the thing that had been hiding in the swarm's center, the broodmother, suddenly became visible. It was enormous, city-sized. Its carapace was covered in the fused remains of ships from a dozen species. And for the first time in the entire war, it stopped moving. It was confused. Vance smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized the thing he was hunting could feel fear. "Now you see me," he said. The Council's retreat order was rescinded 17 seconds later, not because they believed Vance, not because they understood his strategy, but because every ship in the fleet had witnessed a single human corvette do the impossible, and every captain, every crew, every living being in that armada had suddenly realized that running might not be the only option. Thrax was the first to break formation. His dreadnought turned hard, its engines burning white-hot as it reversed course. Behind him, a dozen Krix frigates followed, then the Ildar cruisers, then the Thren destroyers. "Human Vance," Yarlik said, his voice stripped of its cold logic, replaced by something raw and uncertain. "What is your intent?" Vance was already plotting a new course, his fingers dancing across the console with the speed of someone who had memorized every control, every override, every hidden function. The broodmother is the key. Kill it, and the swarm loses coordination. The drones revert to animal instinct. No tactics, no unity. They become target practice. "That entity has survived 17 direct hits from our heaviest ordnance," Yarlik said. "Your single shot disabled only a fraction of its escort. You cannot kill it." "I'm not going to kill it." Vance pulled up a holographic map of the sector. It showed the swarm's formation, a complex web of drones, broodmothers, and something else at the very center. Something that pulsed with a light that made even Vance's steel eyes narrow. "I'm going to make it wish I had." He highlighted a route that passed directly through the swarm's densest cluster. A route that every tactical model, including the Council's 4 million simulations, had marked as unsurvivable. "That's a death sentence," Thrax rumbled, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "No," Vance said. "It's a door. The broodmother thinks in straight lines. It expects enemies to flee or charge head-on. It doesn't understand lateral thinking. It doesn't understand sacrifice. And it sure as hell doesn't understand a species that looks at a 99% casualty rate and says, 'So you're telling me there's a chance?'" He engaged the engines. The last gasp shot forward, threading a gap between two converging drone swarms with barely a meter to spare. The hull screamed as chitin claws scraped against armor. Warning lights flashed red. Lumen began reciting a list of system failures in a voice that was trying very hard to stay calm. "Commander, port engine at 60%. Starboard stabilizer destroyed. Life support holding, but—" "Don't tell me the problems," Vance interrupted. "Tell me the solutions." "There are no solutions. There are only less catastrophic failures." "Good enough." Behind him, the fleet was following. Not all of it. The Council's bureaucratic core was still frozen in indecision, but the captains who had watched him destroy 300 drones in a single shot were now burning hard to catch up. They didn't understand what he was doing, but they understood that running hadn't worked, and that was enough. The broodmother reacted. Vance saw it through the viewport, the massive creature turning, its carapace plates shifting to reveal hundreds of launch bays. More drones, thousands of them. They poured out like a flood, their wings darkening the stars. "New contacts," Lumen said. 3,000, 5,000, 8,000. "Commander, we cannot—" "I know." Vance reached for the singularity projector's activation switch. Then he stopped. His hand hovered over the duct-taped metal, trembling for the first time in years, because he remembered. He remembered Maria's face, pale and bloodless, as she looked up from the medbay cot. They'd been civilians then, cargo haulers, not soldiers. The swarm's third wave had hit their convoy without warning. Leo, their 6-year-old son, had been in the observation deck when the hull breached. Maria had made it to the escape pod. She'd had a choice: go back for Leo or save herself. She'd chosen to save herself. Vance had found her 3 days later, still in that pod, still staring at the empty seat where their son should have been. She hadn't spoken a word since the breach. She hadn't needed to. Her eyes said everything. I ran. I left him. I ran. She died 6 months later. The doctor said it was organ failure. Vance knew better. She just stopped wanting to live. And now here he was, hand on a switch that would either save the fleet or kill him, and he understood for the first time what Maria had felt in that moment. The weight of a choice that had no right answer. The terror of knowing that whatever you did, someone you loved would pay the price. But Vance wasn't Maria. He'd made his peace with that a long time ago. He closed his eyes, opened them, and flipped the switch. The singularity projector fired again, but this time something was wrong. The purple glow flickered, sputtered, then flared bright enough to blind the sensors. The microscopic black hole didn't evaporate after 0.3 seconds. It held. It grew. "Commander," Lumen's voice was no longer calm. "The projector is overloading. Singularity containment failing in 10 seconds. Vance cursed, a single quiet word that carried more weight than any scream. He'd known the salvage device was unstable. He'd known the second shot might be the last. But he hadn't expected it to happen now, not when the broodmother was still 300 kilometers away. Not when the fleet was finally believing in something other than retreat. He looked at the growing black hole on his display, at the drones being pulled into its gravity well, at the broodmother, finally showing something other than cold intelligence, showing fear. And he made a decision. "Lumen," he said, "transfer helm control to my neural link, full manual." "Commander, that protocol was never certified. The neural feedback could what, kill me?" Vance almost laughed. "Lumen, I've been dead since Leo stopped breathing. I just forgot to lie down." He engaged the link. The sensation was indescribable, like being unmade and remade 1,000 times per second. He felt the last gasp's hull as if it were his own skin. He felt the heat of the engines as if they were his own blood. He felt the growing singularity as if it were a cancer in his chest. And he flew, not away from the singularity, toward it. The fleet watched in stunned silence as the tiny human corvette accelerated directly into the black hole's gravity well. The broodmother, confused by the unpredictable prey, hesitated. That hesitation cost it. Vance used the singularity's pull to slingshot around its event horizon, coming out the other side at a velocity that should have torn the ship apart. The last gasp screamed. Alarms blared. Hull integrity dropped to 12%. But Vance didn't stop. He aimed the ship's nose directly at the broodmother's exposed core, the pulsing light he'd seen earlier, the thing that made the swarm more than just animals. "One shot," he whispered. "That's all I need." The railgun was offline. The missile pods were empty. The point defense laser had melted 3 minutes ago. But the last gasp itself, its fusion core, its engines, its very mass, was a weapon. Vance locked the throttle open and released the controls. Then he opened a channel to the fleet. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Tell the Council something for me," he said. "We don't retreat because we're afraid. We retreat because we're choosing our battlefield. Today, this is it." He cut the channel, closed his eyes, and thought of Leo, of Maria, of all the people who had run and never stopped running. Then he pressed the self-destruct sequence. The last gasp's fusion core went critical at the exact moment the ship pierced the broodmother's outer carapace. The explosion was small by cosmic standards, barely a pinprick against the darkness of space, but it was enough. The broodmother's core was delicate, organic, designed to coordinate millions of drones, not withstand a point-blank fusion detonation from inside its own body. The creature convulsed once, a spasm that sent shockwaves through the entire swarm, and then it went dark. Every drone in the sector stopped. Their coordinated formations dissolved into chaos. Some attacked each other, some fled. Most simply floated, mindless, their neural links to the dead broodmother severed forever. The fleet, watching from a safe distance, saw the swarm's seventh wave collapse in real time. The unstoppable hunting machine had become a cloud of confused animals, and in the center of it all, where the last gasp had been, there was nothing but expanding debris and silence. The Xeno Council convened 3 hours later. The chamber was vast, a cathedral of logic carved into an asteroid's core, with seating for representatives of all 23 species. Normally, the debates were cold, measured, and interminable. Today, there was no debate. Only silence. Overseer Yarlix stood at the center of the chamber, his crystalline form shifting through colors no Thren had ever displayed before. Gray for grief, white for uncertainty, and beneath it all, a faint flickering orange that the translator could not quite name. The human, Yarlix said finally, Commander Elias Vance. His actions were outside all known tactical frameworks. Thrax's mandibles clicked in what might have been respect. He disobeyed a direct order. He risked the entire fleet on a suicidal maneuver, and he saved every one of us. That is not a justification, a Thren elder interjected. If every species acted on individual instinct rather than collective logic, the coalition would collapse. But we didn't act on instinct, Thrax rumbled. We acted on fear. He acted on something else. Yarlix raised a crystalline appendage for silence. I have been reviewing the human service record. Prior to the swarm's first wave, Commander Vance was a cargo hauler. No formal military training, no tactical education. He learned to fight by watching us lose. He paused. The chamber held its breath. Chamber held. His final transmission included a phrase I did not initially understand. We don't retreat because we're afraid. We retreat because we're choosing our battlefield. I have run this phrase through 4 million simulations. In every scenario where the coalition adopts this philosophy, where retreat is redefined as tactical repositioning rather than survival, the probability of victory increases by 300%. The chamber erupted. Protests, exclamations. A Krix war chief actually slammed his claw on the table, cracking the crystalline surface. But Yarlix continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. The humans have been a junior species in this coalition for 40 years. We granted them observer status because they were too erratic, too emotional, too illogical. Today, one of their pilots ignored every command we gave him. He did not do so out of recklessness. He did so because he saw what we could not. And he paid for that vision with his life. He turned to face the holographic display at the center of the chamber. It showed the wreckage of the broodmother, floating dead in the void, surrounded by the mindless remnants of its swarm. Effective immediately, Yarlix said. Humanity is granted full military status within the coalition. Furthermore, I am recommending that all future tactical doctrines include a new clause, the Vance Protocol. In any situation where a commanding officer believes retreat is tactically unsound, they may override standard orders, provided they are willing to accept the same consequences as Commander Vance. The chamber fell silent again. Then, slowly, Thrax raised his claw in salute. One by one, the other representatives followed. Even the Thren elders, their crystalline forms flickering with colors they could not name. Yarlix watched the display and felt something he had not felt in 3,000 years, something that had no name in any Thren emotion matrix. He thought it might be hope. 6 months later, the coalition launched its counteroffensive. The swarm, leaderless and fractured, was pushed back system by system. The drones still fought, they were still deadly, still relentless, but without broodmothers to coordinate them, they were predictable, vulnerable. Human pilots fought alongside Krix and Ilda and Thren for the first time. They were still erratic, still emotional, still prone to doing things that made no tactical sense, but they also won battles, again and again and again. And somewhere, in the debris field where the last gasp had died, a single escape pod drifted. Its signal was weak. Its life support was failing. And inside, held together by little more than stubbornness and duct tape, Commander Elias Vance opened his eyes. He had no idea how he'd survived. The self-destruct should have vaporized him. But the last gasp's AI, Lumen, had ejected his pod at the last possible nanosecond, sacrificing her own core to give him a chance. Vance looked at the escape pod's display. It showed the fleet's position, light years away. It showed the swarm's remnants scattered and dying. and it showed a single blinking priority message from the Xeno Council. He opened it. Commander Vance, you are ordered to return to Coalition space immediately. Your species requires your presence, your council requires your testimony, and we require your example. Vance read the message twice. Then he leaned back in the pod's cracked acceleration couch and laughed, a quiet, exhausted sound that echoed off the metal walls. He thought of Maria, of Leo, of all the people who had run, and for the first time in 6 years, he didn't feel like one of them. He reached for the pod's manual controls, powered up the thrusters, and began the long, slow journey home. Behind him, the swarm's corpse drifted into a star. Ahead of him, the galaxy was learning something new. That sometimes the most logical thing you can do is listen to the one who refuses to run,